Good morning, everyone. That is on. I'm going to call this meeting to order. And our first resolution is to go into committee of the whole. Jeanette?
Moved by Councillor Lichty, seconded by Deputy Warden Vandewaal. Resolved that council resolve itself into committee of the whole closed session as authorized under section 239 of the Municipal Act to consider a adoption of closed minutes of meeting held April 17th, 2023, a position plan or procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board as it relates to the Howe Island ferry operations, and a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board as it relates to the property acquisition for the KMP Trail.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. No, you don't. Sit. For now. Good morning, everyone. Going to call this meeting to order. We begin this gathering by acknowledging and celebrating these traditional lands as a gathering place of the First Peoples and their ancestors who are entrusted to care for Mother Earth since time immemorial. We do so respecting both the land and the Indigenous people who continue to walk with us through this world. Today, the county is committed to working with Indigenous people and all residents to pursue a united path of reconciliation. We will start with our first motion.
Moved by Councillor Fowler, seconded by Councillor Leonard, resolved that council rise from committee of the whole closed session without reporting.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. There's no addendums. Is there any disclosure pecuniary interest in general nature thereof of any item on today's agenda by any member of council? Seeing none, we'll note that in the minutes. Motion to adopt the minutes.
Moved by Councillor Gowdy, seconded by Councillor Saunders, resolved that the minutes of the regular council meeting held April 17th, 2024 be adopted.
Any discussion on those? All those in favor? Carried.
Moved by Councillor Greenwood Spears, seconded by Councillor Lichty, resolved that the minutes of the special council meeting held May 8th, 2024 be adopted.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. There's no delegations or presentations, no proclamations. We have a motion to move into the committee of the whole.
Moved by Councillor Leonard, seconded by Councillor Fowler, that council adjourn and meet as committee of the whole council with the deputy warden in the chair.
All those in favor? Carried. I will turn this chair over to you.
Thank you. Our first order of business is briefings by newly minted CAO, Mr. Kevin Farrell.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Thank you, Council. So I'll be providing an administrative update for May 2024. Similar to as my predecessor, I won't cover every piece in the slide, but I'll touch on some highlights. So in terms of the CAO schedule for May, the key ones I'd touch on here is we have our Frontenac Municipal Services Corporation board meeting here tomorrow. We also have a Frontenac Municipal Services Corporation Technical Support Committee meeting May 22nd. And another one that I'd highlight is I'll be presenting at the Ontario Home Builders Association in Ottawa on May 28th around communal services and the work of the FMSC. An update from EOWC. There was a special virtual meeting on May 2nd where the EOWC caucus accepted the business plan from EORN on the 7 and 7. From that, they've created a CAO's working group to determine next steps. I'm part of that group. We meet, the EOWC Wardens Caucus is meeting on May 23rd, and the following day, the CAOs are getting together again to discuss those housing issues. Some AMO communications, I won't go into these, but they're available in the slides. And a quick update, provincial news, to further promote the development of purpose-built rental units in Ontario. The province is creating a new optional property subclass, new multi-residential properties. And we'll be able to provide more information on that as we go forward. A little update on human resources. So Barb and her team continue to be busy. We've had 140 postings as of May 6th. Interviews are ongoing in all areas of Fairmount. There's 16 full-time summer contracts posted for Frontenac paramedics. Program and clinical manager, nurse practitioner positions have been posted, and interviews are coming up. We've also posted and had a successful candidate for supervisor of GIS. In terms of labor relations, we continue to wait on the interest arbitration for QP 2290. There's some ongoing grievance and arbitration issues that we're working through. As council is aware, we conducted a risk assessment for marine services. We engaged a third party on that, and 15 recommendations came out of that report. And under miscellaneous, Lisa Moreland continues to lead our scheduling software implementation. It's going well. Verico was the successful vendor, and we're working closely with staff to get that system set up across the organization. Leads leadership training kicked off in April. It was hosted by Deputy Chief Gowdy and Superintendent Hurtubise, and it was a great first step. And council and non-union remuneration studies are in the final stages of data collection, and those reports will be brought forward to council when they're ready. Engagement and wellness survey will launch this week, so that's an important one as well. A big kudos to the Fairmount team for their BPSO launch. So that's a best practice spotlight organization. So Rebecca, Anna, Emily, and Tammy celebrated the launch of this in Toronto alongside the Minister of Long-Term Care, Stan Cho. So invites have gone out to council to celebrate this on June 18th at Fairmount Home as well. Our engagement, we continue to see great engagement numbers across all of our communication channels, from the website to Frontenac Maps to Engage Frontenac. We continue to see strong engagement numbers here. Planning update. So in terms of the community planning permit system for waterfront development, county staff conducted site visits May 6th and 7th. With the team from Planscape. They took them all over the county and introduced them to various communities and different types of waterfront development throughout the county. Staff are and the consulting team are preparing an engagement plan. It will be published by the end of May. Again, we continue to see the numbers for planning applications. So development inquiries and applications have started to increase with the arrival of nice weather. And staff are starting to process the first consent applications under the new delegated authority bylaws for the 3 townships. And in terms of an economic development update, Richard's been quite busy. He's been out on the trails with Jane McCulloch of Terminus Consulting, evaluating the tourism market readiness of our KMP Trail, as well as some of the other loops and trails that connect. A big kudos to Debbie Miller. Last week, she was in Waterloo taking the year one of her economic development certification. So big kudos to Debbie on that, and a big welcome to Joseph Cachetto, who's our economic development student for the summer. And I touched on it earlier, but Christy Elderhurst, who was one of our GIS specialists, was the successful candidate for our new supervisor of GIS. So a big congratulations to Christy. And we've also welcomed Lucia Bralick this summer to help with the GIS team as well. And I think that's it for me, unless there's any questions.
Councillor Saunders.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. 2 quick questions. You mentioned the risk assessment for the ferry. When will the results of that be available to the public?
So we're going to be working to implement the ones we can at a county level, but there's some stuff we need to engage with MTO about, and as well as through our labor management. So for the time being, it won't be released, but once we work through what can and can't be accomplished through those 15 recommendations, we'll go from there.
Thank you. The second is the waterfront assessment or survey was done. Did that include Marysville and Wolf Island?
So I'll turn it over to Joe for that one.
Through you, Deputy Warden. Yes, we had the consultants on Wolf Island. We took them to Easy Lane, for example, to see some bad planning. So they got a good tour of the island.
Councillor Greenwood Spears.
Quick question on the AMO piece and that for the educational opportunity. Oftentimes council is in a position of trying to balance the competing rights. And I see that there's a May 23rd workshop in that. Is there any opportunity to have it more broadly advertised in that, or how is that expensed out? Because I believe it's fairly pricey per person to take that particular.
Yeah, I don't know the exact costs, or we can look into that, but I know AMO sends out all kinds of different opportunities, and I believe most of them are virtual or webinars or training opportunities for council. So definitely something we can look into.
Any other questions? I have a couple. I should know what's 2290
So that's the Fairmount Group.
Fairmount. Okay, thank you. The other one is, do you see big changes in this rental units and how quick the changes are coming, and are they going to be positive for rural?
If we continue moving forward with the communal services project
Okay.
and we're able to develop the mixed housing, it could have a significant impact. As council is well aware, we don't have a lot of rental market right now, rental housing available. So this could potentially be a positive step forward.
Just my last question or comment is, when the planning information is all there, and I know it's for the 3 municipalities that the county does the work for, would it be any benefit to show what South Frontenac is, because it is still the county, just to see what is happening, or just forget it?
No, not forget. I don't see it. Is that on your council reports? I don't get information from your department on hours and such.
Okay, okay, so does anybody see anything wrong that if we actually wanted to include it?
I think it would be excellent, even if, even if we did it quarterly.
Right.
To see where you're at.
Because
Comparison
that's what
to
we
us.
get it as councilors quarterly.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. There are no other comments? Thank you, Kevin. Mr. Farrell, sorry.
Good first report.
No unfinished business and no consent reports from the chief administrative officer. At this point, then we have a motion to move into the committee of management of Fairmount Home.
Moved by Councillor Saunders, seconded by Councillor Gowdy, that Committee of the Whole Council adjourn and meet as Committee of Management of Fairmount Home with the Deputy Warden in the chair.
All in favor? Carried. The Fairmount Home Quarterly Update Activity Report is there. Do we have any questions? Councillor Greenwood Spears?
Thank you. Just because there were 6 critical incidents in that before them related to resident abuse, and that, has there been any strategies put in place in that to help reduce that? That seemed a little high for the first quarter. And is it perhaps one more problematic person that needs to have additional? I have no idea, but it seemed high.
Go ahead.
You are correct that there is an individual that is driving the process, and we are doing everything we can within the ministry requirements to address it.
Thank you, Susan. Are there any other questions for Susan? Seeing none.
Moved by Warden Smith, seconded by Councillor Greenwood Spears, that the Committee of Management of Fairmount Home adjourn and revert back to Committee of the Whole Council.
All in favor? Carried. Recommended reports from the Chief Administrative Officer.
Moved by Councillor Lichty, seconded by Councillor Fowler, be it resolved that the request from the Township of Frontenac Islands asking the County of Frontenac to consider amending boarding policies to remove all restrictions during peak commute hours, thereby deleting the reference to a 3,000 kilogram weight limit in policies MS 12-019, heavy truck restriction, MS 17-001, heavy truck restriction period agricultural related exemptions, and MS 12-018, weekend and holiday truck restrictions be denied.
Discussion? All in favor of denial? Corporate service application of staff to AMO Board of Directors.
Moved by Councillor Leonard, seconded by Councillor Gowdy. Be it resolved that Council of the Corporation of the County of Frontenac endorse and supports Meredith Stavely Watson in her application to fill the Association of Municipalities of Ontario Board of Directors County Caucus staff vacancy for the remainder of the 2024-2026 term.
Any questions or comments? Yes,
Just a
Board.
comment. I thoroughly support Meredith doing this, and I think it can certainly be a win for all of us if she does get on the board of AMO. Having someone on the inside who's able to bring back to us things that may be helpful to us, but also having her able to take our issues to AMO, I think is very worthwhile. So I hope council supports this motion.
any other comments? All in favor? Carried. Emergency and Transportation Services.
Moved by Councillor Saunders, seconded by Deputy Warden Smith. Be it resolved that the County of Frontenac accept the Emergency and Transportation Services 2025 Ambulance Replacement Report for information, and further that Council approve the request to add one vehicle to the Frontenac paramedic fleet in 2024 by keeping one vehicle that was due for replacement in 2024, and further that Council approve the transfer of up to $198,000 from the Joint Vehicle Reserve for deposit on the purchase of 2025 vehicles to be used in the 2024 budget year.
Questions? All in favor? Carried. Emergency and Transportation Services authorized to enter into an agreement with Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation of Canada.
Moved by Councillor Greenwood Spears, seconded by Councillor Lichty. Be it resolved that the warden and clerk be authorized to enter into an agreement with Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation of Canada for the funding to support Frontenac paramedics bicycle teams.
Any questions? Councillor Saunders.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. This is a phenomenal request, or not a request. This is a phenomenal aspect of Firehouse Subs. And I think they deserve a lot of credit for supporting paramedics and firefighters across Canada. So I just want to acknowledge their efforts.
Thank you. And yes, one time South Frontenac was also a beneficiary of a substantial donation to fire. Okay, all in favor? Carried. Information reports from the Chief Administrative Officer. Are there any questions on the 2024 first quarter financials? Or County of Frontenac Investment Report? Corporate Services result of the building condition assessment? Kind of figured that one might. We'll start with Councillor Lichty.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. I took a look at that. It's kind of hard to follow because the printing is so small. The eyes aren't what they used to be. It kind of lays out where we need to go with Fairmont Homes replacement. It also lays out some additional questions that I believe staff are beginning to work on. You have, if you look at a 160 unit building replacement being $100 million, maybe less. But if you use that for calculations, this building at 128 units, if it was new, would be worth 80 million. We have, we really need a facilities manager. We need a program that lays out, like the way it's presented to us is the condition assessment is very difficult to interpret. But I would like to see, and we have the software, I understand, to actually do this. And you would start with 24, 25, 26, those are the years, and this is the total expense. And in those years, you could then break it down. And it should show over the years, as by 2045, the costs associated with Fairmont Home are going to be horrendous. So if you start looking long range, I know this is not the place for that discussion, you can start thinking that the replacement of this building, one next door, should be 2045, maybe 2048, 49. This is my
Thank you.
comments.
Okay. Warden Smith.
My comment is, I started to look at them all. And I was going across and across and I thought, somebody's got to do an analysis of this besides me. Because I was just looking at the very poor and then the price tag. So I guess I want to ask, is there going to be an analysis come to us based on all this information?
Who's answering that? Alex?
Yeah. So through you, Deputy Warden. So yeah, that'll be part of the long-range capital plan where we'll prioritize all those items and then put forward a plan on what we replace when. And again, apologies to council. I appreciate that was a small spreadsheet. It was about 80 rows wide. I think I got it down to 10, still pretty small font, but we can distribute that to council afterwards, in the full Excel if you want all the detail there.
Counselor Green, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I would like a paper copy that's readable.
And maybe a summation. Counselor Greenwood Spears.
Yes, thank you very much. It was very helpful for getting this level of detail, and apparently my cheaters work well. And that, so it was very surprising. There doesn't, and I didn't expect the analysis to have a priority setting, but I think we should probably look very quickly at priority setting. And that when I'm looking at electrical, when I'm looking at plumbing, I'm looking at water quality treatment pieces, and that there are things, and certainly probably half of these could be knocked off for prices under the $2,000 mark. And that's so combined, there's going to be quite a bit, but they should get knocked off, and that they're not major projects, but that would certainly get us down the road. But especially when you're looking at electrical and plumbing, and that in a facility that is water dependent, it's not hooked onto the city, and that, so it's really a higher priority to me. And that I was surprised that handrails and that were mentioned. And I was also surprised, did we never take advantage of the replacement of windows for that we would get the kickback from the federal level? Because there was envelopes of funding in that for municipalities to get that updated. And there's a whole lot of windows that are a problem, as well as steel doors and that. But it wasn't just Fairmont Home. While it certainly had the lion's share of the very poor and poor settings, and that the Parham paramedics building that was also very poor. And that, and it surprised me in that for like smoke detecting and fire related things and electrical and that. So again, I think we need to get a priority for electrical and plumbing are the two that jump to me, and that fixing concrete slabs and things of that nature, that's going to be something much more major. But the other stuff and that, I can't believe we don't seem to have as robust of a maintenance program as I would have thought would be in place, because these are assets. And I assume that they're listed on our asset management sheet, but maybe that's just for public works. But basically I was very surprised that things that would have normally been looked after simply weren't looked after, in my view.
Thank you. Counselor Saunders.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Can I assume that following the long-term capital plan report that's going to be put forward by the treasurer, that there'll be an operational plan that to follow and execute on priorities? Is that cool? Is that a fair assumption?
Would Alex like to answer that, or Kevin?
Yeah, absolutely. So step one here was to get the condition assessment.
Exactly.
Know where the
That's what was
blind
asked
spots
for.
are. Step two is then to put a plan into action. And now we know we've got a better indication what the high priority items are, what we need to extend life of the building. So we'll bring something forward to council. Typically that's through the capital plan each year. What are we going to replace? And as well, other steps that we can do to maybe, get on top of that more quickly.
Counselor Lichty.
Okay, so going back to my work history many years ago, this is what I actually used to do. And I think Alex and his team have done a great job of getting it this far. It's a great start. And now what you're going to do is go through that, and you're going to put it into a software package that you can manipulate. And you can make assessments and so on. And some of those small items are operational. They will drop off. But it depends what the walking orders to the consultant were. I mean, they're in there. There's something to be looked at. And then the only time you're going to look at priorities is when, just because you have a 30-year plan doesn't mean everything's going to happen exactly in year 26 or 22 or 28. There has to be an assessment every year of the projected items. And that's when you prioritize it, because you may not have enough money in a particular year to do what you want to do. So you have a roof, you have a concrete slab, and you have windows, and you only have enough money to do one of the three. It's just like your own home. What do you do? That's when the priorities come into place. And I think it's a long-term plan, and I think Alex and his team have a great start, and we're in good hands. So we go forward from there.
Thank you. I didn't read it all. I got through a lot of it, and I started circling all the things that were under 5 years, and I thought that would probably be a good start. Right? I mean, if you're going to look at 10 and 15, of course you have to keep those, because before you know it, 10 years is up. But at least if you start getting off the ones that are the 5 years, or what's most important to get off of there, I think is important. So I agree. I think we'll have a plan moving forward. I think it was the start that we asked for, and we have that information. So thank you. No report from Advisory Committee, Council, and we will return to council.
Moved by Councillor Fowler, seconded by Councillor Leonard, that council revert from Committee of the Whole Council to council.
All in favor? Carried.
Okay. Moving right along, we have a motion of support for the request for the Wolf Island. Oh, sorry. Back here. Right. Adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole first.
Moved by Councillor Gowdy, seconded by Councillor Saunders, that the report of the Committee of the Whole Council be adopted and that the necessary actions or bylaws be enacted.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried.
Moved by Councillor Greenwood Spears, seconded by Councillor Saunders, whereas the Wolf Island Medical Clinic Board has demonstrated the need for financial assistance in the request for $20,000 to secure a nurse practitioner, and whereas they are able to provide all needed amenities and support staff that would be required, and whereas the funds requested would be for the sole support and recruitment of the proposed nurse practitioner, and whereas the funds having been set aside by Frontenac County were to be used for the recruitment and retention of a physician or nurse practitioner, therefore be it resolved that the County of Frontenac provide funding in the amount of $20,000 to the Wolf Island Medical Clinic for the purpose of acquiring a nurse practitioner to be expensed from the Strategic Projects Reserve, and further that the Wolf Island Medical Clinic Board provide an update back to the county in 1 year as to the outcome of this investment by the county.
Okay, discussion on this motion. Who would like to start? Judy?
Sure. I think that this is a step in the right direction. I think this is exactly what we had set the money aside for. And if they're successful in this project, it may become a template for some of the other more rural settings and that. And it's very reasonable from their approach. They have the building, they have the staff, they have some financial resources. It's not that the county will be footing the entire bill for it. They're proposed moving forward with their funds as well. And they're moving forward to hopefully get rural and isolated designation that for support from the Ministry of Health. And we are asking for a delegation at AMO in that regard.
Okay. Anyone else? Ron?
Well, I don't ever remember that the original motion when this fund was set up, that we had it in there nurse practitioner. That's probably been added. I don't know unless somebody can show me the exact original motion, but it was to set funding aside for doctor recruitment. And I think that Debbie Miller at the last council meeting gave us a plan forward of what we were going to try to do with this money and see what the success was. And we were actually had a plan of what we were going to do with this money. And I think it would be somewhat short-sighted at this point to say, okay, well, let's just take all that money and go in a different plan. And so I could not support this the way it's sitting here on this.
Okay. Counselor Lichty.
Okay, so actually my question is to the mayor of Frontenac Islands. How much money is your township putting towards recruitment? Like, you matching the 20,000 or what?
Actually, this is the charitable group that has asked for it. They haven't approached our council at this point in time, except for the support in getting the rural and isolated designation that if they come to council and that, and at various times they have that, we've always supported them. But this, just to point out to the deputy warden, nurse practitioner was part of the original motion. Because there's a recognition that finding a physician, and I believe you articulate, is a long shot in many regards in that. But finding a nurse practitioner might be very viable. And so it was part of the motion, and it is in keeping with what that fund is for.
Jerry?
I think 20,000 is insufficient. We put $40,000 on the table between us and another township. And we put another 150,000 on the table over 5 years. And we were successful in procuring a physician. And we had a $92,000 rurality index to entice them up front. You're sitting right next to Kingston. And as far as we're concerned, the 90,000 was nice to have, but we're still too close to a metropolitan area, because an hour and a half down the road, unless that individual wants to live in a rural community like the doctor we managed to procure did, they're going to go to the larger municipalities. And we did make a presentation at the Roma conference to the minister about this very thing. And they said, thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you later. We even talked about, if nothing up front, what about retention? Like this $20,000, it's a nice start. I don't think it was, well, I won't say that. I just want to know how it's going to be split among the other 3 townships.
Okay. And I guess that would be my comment as well, as the 20,000 is for the 4 municipalities. And I with you, Ron, remember doctor recruitment, not nurse practitioner. However, nurse practitioners can have the role of a doctor and service the patients as well. Bill, and then Judy.
Thank you, Warden. I'm fully supportive of this request, obviously. We have a history here of having made a decision regarding paramedic services on Wolf Island that station was removed primarily, well, for several reasons, but one of the major reasons was the cost of continuing it. I think coming forward with $20,000 to address what's perceived as a lack of medical service on Wolf Island is a small cost to pay to address what is clearly an issue amongst island residents. So I do fully support this, and I would ask council's approval.
Okay, Judy? Then I'll call the vote.
Okay, as council probably recalls, every year we'll be putting in 20,000. This is the first project that has been brought forward. And even the mechanism had to be laid out in that for how they would apply. I think it would be a win-win-win all the way along, and a template for success. And I would wholly and heartily say that this is the most reasonable approach of county to support services in a rural community. And the fact that we have, quote, a 20-minute boat ride away, the reality is it's 2 to 3 hours. And that's why they'll probably be successful on the rural, isolated, and remote designation, because we have a geographical separation that has become insurmountable and has already cost us, the Frontenac doctors, from return to the clinic because they've been trapped on our island so often. So if we can have a nurse practitioner there for a couple of days, that will save 60 to 70 cars heading to Kingston for seniors on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. It
Okay.
is exactly what that fund was designed for.
Okay. Ron, did you have your hand up?
In an ideal world and hypothetically, when the ferry is operational, as they say, please don't quote 3 hours, because then it'll all be mute. Because that ferry will be running with enormous amounts of cars. It'll be supposedly on time. That's what they're building it for. So I don't think to throw out 3 hours every time, it's 3 hours could be for anybody. So I don't think that's fair. Secondly, I would have been more comfortable to say that the medical clinic on Wolf Island requested Wolf Island Council for $100,000 a year to operate this facility. Would the county contribute? That's a lot different to me. Maybe they're not gonna ask for nothing and the $20,000 did it. I'm not supporting it that way. If it came the other way around, at least it gives us some options to say, okay, well, that municipality is committed to putting up 100,000. Should we help out? But this way, it's just open-ended. We don't know what they're gonna contribute. They could say no. So I just can't support it the way it is.
Okay. Jerry, one last comment.
I have the same issue, like we have all these dollars are already spent. And, so if this vote goes through, then North Frontenac's gonna say, well, what portion of this should we get, even though it's retroactive? Because it was for the same thing. We did go out and recruit and do all this and so on. Not saying that Wolf Island shouldn't have medical, this medical practitioner on the island. Like, it's a good idea. I just don't like the way it's coming to council. I don't like the fact that we haven't got anything concrete from the township council as to how much they want to put in, if anything. So I think it should have come there first and then come here.
Okay, all right. I'm going to ask for a show of hands. All those in favor of the motion as read? Okay, recorded vote has been requested. So what you're voting on is yes to give $20,000 to the Wolf Island Nurse Practitioner Project.
Councillor Fowler, how do you vote? I'm sorry?
In favor.
Yeses and nos.
Councillor Gowdy?
No.
Councillor Greenwood Spears?
In favor?
Yes.
Councillor Leonard? Councillor Lichty?
No,
Councillor Saunders?
Yes.
Warden Smith?
No.
Deputy Warden Vandewaal?
No.
So it's lost on a vote of 6-3.
Okay. All right. Now, the next issue is increasive definition of heavyweight restrictions, Howe Island Ferry.
Moved by Councillor Saunders, seconded by Councillor Greenwood Spears. Whereas the Township of Frontenac Islands desires to improve service of the Frontenac Howe Islander, and whereas policies MS 12-018, MS 17-001, and MS 12-019 regarding the restriction of heavy trucks is currently interpreted by ferry staff as a restriction of trailers regardless of weight. And whereas the intent of these policies is to improve commuters' ability to get to work, and whereas the current description of a heavy truck and trailer is 3,000 kilos, and whereas new passenger vehicles and trucks, including electric vehicles, may exceed that limit, and whereas the current definition of 3,000 kilos will require ferry operators to approach new, larger passenger cars and trucks to request they provide evidence of the weight of their vehicle. And whereas this requirement will result in further interaction between ferry operators and vehicle owners, and whereas increased interaction between ferry operators and vehicle owners may result in a confrontation between vehicle operators and ferry staff, and whereas bylaw 2023-047, a bylaw to establish fees and fares for the Frontenac Howe Islander, defines a heavy vehicle as more than 6,000 kilos. And whereas consistency in the definition of heavy trucks/vehicles will serve to minimize the potential of confrontation between ferry staff and vehicle operators, therefore be it resolved that policies MS 12-018, MS 17-001, and that should say MS 12-019, be updated to define heavy trucks as 6,000 kilos.
Discussion. Who would like to start? Bill?
Thank you, Warden. First of all, I want to thank council for their continued understanding or efforts to try and help us resolve what has become a contentious issue. By way of background, we believe that the current procedure, which defines heavy vehicles and trailer as 3,000 kilograms, is out of date. It's 20 years old. It doesn't reflect what the current realities are. So the current realities are we have a 15-car ferry that's been reduced to 10 cars or 2 lanes. Therefore, more room on the ferry for larger vehicles. The other is as we move towards more electric vehicles and heavier trucks, we suspect we will now run into situations where those passenger vehicles, if that's the right term, will exceed or may exceed that weight, which then puts the ferry operators in a position of having to try and determine whether or not this vehicle is overweight or not. So our overall intent here is to try and address issues that exist now where there is confrontation between vehicle owners and ferry operators regarding their ability to or inability to get on the trailer, get on the ferry with a trailer. I do need to note that the procedure does not specifically restrict trailers. It's defined as a vehicle, a heavy vehicle and trailer that exceeds that weight. So because that's somewhat, in my opinion, because it's somewhat difficult to assess, most ferry operators are just saying it's a ferry, it's a trailer. So no a trailer, you can't come on during those hours of time, which then results in confrontation. We've had 2 of those confrontations in the last 3 weeks, specifically on that issue. So what we're attempting to do here is remove as much misunderstanding, get as much cohesiveness, as much mutual understanding and training so that people can move on and off unobstructed. We've chosen the 6,000 kilograms because that does line up with the current fee schedule. So operators currently are required to identify a vehicle of 6,000 kilograms or more and charge them I believe it's the $17 that's on the current fee schedule that was approved by council. So again, our intent here is to try and bring the current bylaw or procedure up to date and reflect the realities of today with the overall intent of reducing the interaction and potential conflict between various vehicle owners and ferry staff. I'd appreciate your support.
Okay. Deputy Warden Vanderwall.
I guess I have a couple of comments or questions. If the ferry was reduced to 2 lanes, and I know it was for a reason, and if MTO says the ferry mechanical can support heavier weight, I guess I would like to know is, does the ferry operate as a total weight of 2 lanes? Then it shouldn't really matter whether it's one or a trailer or a truck and trailer. If it's a total weight of what the mechanical of that boat can handle, that's why it was reduced. Doesn't exceed the weight. I know there's a bit of a guess to it. But then I don't think it should matter whether you have a truck and trailer or what you have, as long as it's still the 2 lanes and the weight of that mechanical system hasn't been exceeded. And I guess I don't know if you want to answer that right now, but that's what I'm looking at. If MTO says the mechanical of that boat can support a weight limit of X and they're still restricted to 2 lanes, that leaves some gray area for me to maybe changing a bit of the language. But other than that, I don't see just opening it up. I think it's MTO's call as far as I'm concerned, or else, as we know in the other report that your council did not support, an indemnity of the county changing the rules for legal action. So if MTO could tell me that it meets the weight on 2 lanes, then I'm not so concerned whether a person has one in a trailer or what that weight is, as long as it's under what MTO says 2 lanes and their mechanical can support.
Just a clarification that Jeanette has mentioned to me, this is a restriction during the daytime hours. So the
hours.
commuter hours. Okay. Councillor Saunders?
Thank you, Warden. If I can respond to the Deputy Warden's comments. First of all, the load limit for the ferry is clearly defined. It's 45,000 kilograms. It is the responsibility of the ferry operators to assess that when they're loading various vehicles. So do they do so in math, arithmetic? I don't know, but based on their experience, they're very, very good at judging what the total weight going on the ferry is. I don't think this will change that. So I hope that addresses your concern. And sorry, just for clarification, it's not an MTO issue. It would be a county operational issue. They're the ones responsible for deciding how much weight to put on the ferry. And sorry.
Can I ask if that's true? Because we could say put 100,000 on it and MTO is gonna say absolutely not. I would think.
So if I may, the stated capacity of the ferry is 45,000 kilograms. That's MTO has established that. That's the marine architect, whoever did the design, they said that's the maximum capacity, 45,000 kilograms. It's then the ferry operator's responsibility to manage the vehicles going on that to make sure it doesn't exceed. And they do that by going to heavier trucks and asking, so.
I asked a
Yes.
clarification then.
Yes.
When it went from 3 lanes to 2 lanes, the weight stayed the same and it didn't matter because the mechanical couldn't pull it? I don't know who wants to answer that. Maybe you're the ferry operator. I don't know, and I don't know if it's fair to put the MTO person on the hot seat, but I would like to know what that clarification is.
Maybe Rob could answer that for us.
So through the warden, when the vessel went to 2 lanes, it was over stowage, over for escape stowage, okay? So at that time, the vessel did not change weight. It had nothing to do with the weight. It was simply on the basis of carrying out emergency procedures and escape stowage.
Okay, good. Any other comments? I have one comment. To me, this motion is very similar to the motion that was defeated not that long ago. There's 2 things that I think are missing in this motion. One is that when a lawsuit comes, and I feel that will certainly happen, there is nothing in here to indemnify the county that Frontenac Islands will look after that. And there's nothing in here that we wanted before, which was when that lawsuit comes, that the amount of time that our staff will spend putting together our part of that representation, that somebody's going to pay for it other than the county. And those 2 things are missing from this resolution. Councillor Saunders?
Thank you, Warden. Thank you for clarifying that. Our understanding is the major reason why the original, the previous motion was denied was the risk of lawsuits. It's our belief, a non-legal belief, that by merely modifying the procedure as opposed to changing it or deleting it would greatly minimize the risk of lawsuits. Now, we all know that anybody can sue anybody for anything these days, but in our view, just modifying the procedure should be within the right or the realm of the operator. That would be my personal opinion.
Should be and paying the bills is 2 different things. Judy?
Okay, just to clarify in that the previous lawsuit and that I believe was regarding the restriction from farm equipment. And that was quite clearly laid out. And the county lost that because you can't restrict people from their farm equipment and farm products. There's a similar Trades Act, and that county hasn't been tested on, but certainly could be tested on. This is the only ferry in all of Eastern Ontario and, to my knowledge, anywhere that has restrictions around people ability to move on and off the island. And certainly from the Wolf Island perspective, where we have wind turbine equipment that comes and takes up half the boat, it truly is a first come, first serve type of basis. If you line up and you're the next one on, you get to go on. And that is the fairness, because the ferry is a road. It is the only road that can handle much of this equipment. The township ferry that is 75 years old and extremely narrow and a very limited ramp affected by low water, and that there's a lot of limitations around that. This is the road. And so restricting people that have larger vehicles or a trailer behind them because that's where they're bringing their stuff away from commuting hours, they're trying to get to their work. And this is black and white. Glenora, Amherst, Wolf, no ferry has this restriction. And so if somebody wanted to bring a lawsuit saying, well, we should keep that restriction, they wouldn't find support from MTO either because it is a road. We're probably more in the wrong right now. I have no idea how they ever came up with this policy in the past, but it's been wrong.
Just a clarification, and Kevin reminded me that the county did win the lawsuit, but it cost thousands of dollars. Jerry and then Fred?
Okay, so we started talking about the existing weight limit being too low. So pickup trucks, especially electric vehicles and so on, are gradually increasing in weight. A new Cadillac electric vehicle weighs 8,000 pounds. So 3,000 kilograms is 6,600 pounds. So a modification may be increasing that 3,000, not doubling it or tripling it, well, doubling it to 6,000 kilograms, which is 13,000 pounds. So my thought was the same as that the warden pointed out. It looks like it's just another way to get around what we had talked about before. So if the ferry can handle the weight, fine. But I think there should be something attached to the motion which says if there's a lawsuit, our time for our staff is covered and our legal expenses are covered. If there's no issue, that won't be a problem. If there is a potential issue, then the county is covered. So.
Councillor Fowler.
Who actually insures the ferry? Is it the MTO? Is it the county, or who's? Just a question, yeah.
So through the warden, the vessel is all insured by MTO. They self-insure themselves. The liability aspect for liability insurance is placed by the county. The vessel itself is insured through the ministry.
And again, if there's no risk that it's going to happen, then it shouldn't be a big deal to put that in the motion. If you're that sure that there's not going to be a lawsuit, then indemnify us and agree to pay if it does come. You had your hand up first, Ron?
Yeah,
And Jerry?
I had a couple comments to the same thing. If there's no risk of a lawsuit, then they should not be afraid to put that risk clause in. If that's what they're, the second part is, I'm not debating it with you, but we have load restrictions on local roads too. So don't tell me that there are no road restrictions. There are bridge restriction weights, there are road restriction weights, and there are vehicle restrictions on township roads. So that is also, the only other thing I could support is if it was deferred, and I mean, we were asked to change this weight back quite a while ago, and it was about the agriculture. It was about a couple of things. That's how this all started. That request didn't come from the county. So I could support a deferral of the motion if MTO could bring back a report that would say what they could support. Because they are the operator of the ferry, and I'm not telling them what to do. So I would support that, or else I can't support it.
Councillor Greenwood Spears.
Thank you. Deputy Warden Vanderwall seems to be conflating a lot of things. The county is the operator of the ferry. The MTO owns it. It is not about overall weight of the ferry or road restrictions or anything of that nature. It's about allowing people that have heavier vehicles or towing a trailer to get on and off the boat, the same as anybody else if they're lined up appropriately. It's that black and white. And as for the indemnity that you're looking for, we did get a legal opinion. They said it was far too broad. Don't go into that. So we won't. This is not something that would be, well, we already did the survey as requested by the county, and the majority of people want this to be in place. And that's documented. You'll always have somebody, if you live your life with one wild card that wants to sue, you can't stop them. And that, but they can lose and they can pay as they've had to in the past. But at this point in time, it's hampering a significant number of people from getting to work.
Okay. So I think it's time to call for the vote, and I would request a recorded vote on this one. Oh, sorry.
Warden, again, I appreciate council's time on this. I'm wondering whether we should defer this motion and take your advice back to township again. I'm not sure if that's, I guess I'd look to the clerk for some advice on that.
Anybody is able to bring a motion forward to defer?
Yes.
The other comment I would like to make, if it's defeated again today, you need a 2/3 to get it back. So at least with a deferral, you have an option to have some conversation.
So yes, we can defer it if you so wish. If you move deferral, we could entertain that.
The only way I would say, I actually could support a deferral. If MTO or whoever brings the report that says they could support this. Or support why it's 2 lanes, what the weight is, whatever, that's fine. But I need somebody that's smarter than me, that runs that boat, to tell me what can and can't be done. And if that means there's 2 vehicles together or whatever it is, I don't care. But I would like to see that report come to me. So if that's what those 2 that have made the motion would support, that's fine. If not, then I have no problem voting the way it is.
But even with MTO supporting it, you still would want to see that the county's indemnified of the legal actions that could take place and the amount of time staff will spend when that lawsuit comes. Because we know that's exactly what happened in the past. And I don't care if you reduce the weight or you increase the weight. There are those that are going to want to litigate and take us to court. Ray.
Well, I definitely support deferral on this because we don't want to put the county in the position for another lawsuit. So when you bring this back, I think it should be brought back clearly and then ask for a vote. But I do definitely support a deferral on this one.
Do we have a mover for deferral?
I'll move.
Or we had Bill moved it. We needed a seconder. Nikki? Okay, so the motion on the floor then is to defer.
So we typically postpone it, but do we want to know till when? Do we want to put a date on that? It's postponed indefinitely, postponed pending to the next meeting, or just postpone it?
Given that the ongoing issues with the ferry in terms of loading procedures, following procedures is a constant source of potential for confrontation, I think it needs to come back as quickly as possible. So I assume that would be at the next council meeting.
Okay, Ron?
Well, and on that note, there's a couple of key pieces of information that I would like to see if we're going to defer it. And secondly, I think we have a bit of a strategy for confrontation and some of the things that have happened on the island. So I think we should see if those things also have an effect on.
Okay, so maybe we'll leave it that it could come back at the next meeting if some more information is received. If not, then the meeting following. Is that fair?
Sorry, so to be clear, the motion to defer would allow us to bring it back to the next council meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, and if you weren't ready, it could be brought back to the second meeting. All right. So we're voting on the deferral to be brought back as soon as possible when the information's been gathered. So there's no specific date. I would take it Bill is.
Yeah, sorry, if I can, it would go back to Township Council for further discussion and the appropriate motion coming forward.
Okay. Judy and then Ron.
MTO won't engage in the township discussing this piece because the county is the operator. So it needs to be the county seeking this clarification.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I was gonna say. Can we ask MTO also to have a comment? We know it's a 60-40 split on the island. We know there's never gonna be people agree. There are a couple of comments in there that the county wants to see in there. They know that also. And so is it fair to ask MTO to say, could they have a comment on the operation? I know they have comments anyway, but I think it would be good that if we address it.
So yeah, Rob and I will be meeting with MTO. We meet regularly. We can add this to that agenda.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, now we need to vote on the deferral. All those in favor of deferral? Those opposed? Deferral is approved. Okay, is there any giving of notice of motions? No correspondence. Pages of it. Deputy Warden Vanderwall.
I mean, I know it's kind of a no-brainer and we should do it. BD. Support sustainable infrastructure funding. I mean, we've been crying it forever and they have a motion on there. So I guess it would only be fair that we should support it. But
So we're asking to pull BD to support.
So that would require a member of council to bring forward a motion under motions, notice of which has been given at the next council meeting to support this resolution.
okay, I'd like to go back 2 pages and serve notice of motion. That we
Okay.
support Sterling Rodden's request for sustainable infrastructure funding.
Okay. So noted. Does he need a seconder for that?
He will, but not today.
Not today? Okay. All right. Is there any other business? We are at bylaws.
Moved by Councillor Lichty and seconded by Councillor Fowler, resolved that leave be given to the mover to introduce bylaws A and B that have been circulated to all members of County Council, and that bylaws A and B be read a first and second time.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried.
And I just would point out to council that the original bylaw A was pulled from the agenda. It was on there by mistake. Third reading, moved by Councillor Lichty, seconded by Councillor Fowler, resolved that bylaws A and B be read a third time, signed, sealed, and finally passed.
All those in favor? Carried. A motion to bylaw to confirm.
Nope, we're past that. We're at adjournment.
Oh, okay. We did
So-
that one, did we? All right.
We passed the bylaws.
So this meeting is adjourned at
Move.
10:33.
So moved by Councillor Leonard and seconded by Councillor Gowdy that the meeting hereby adjourn at 10:33 a.m.
All those in favor? Carried. What are we going to do for the rest of the day?